Ross Barkan, thank you for joining me.
Very excited to be here.
So I was prepping for this interview and I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Alex Sarando,
Love Saranda.
and he's like, "Oh, are you going to talk to Ross about politics or are you going to talk to him about like literature and writing?" And I had to confess to Alex that I didn't know you wrote about politics. I knew you exclusively from novels and things like the Metropolitan Review.
I like politics. I am not a politics junkie, which surprises people because that's how I make my living. I've been writing about politics since I was 22 years old. I write a column for New York Magazine. I contribute to the Times Magazine. I write a lot on New York politics, on national politics. I know it very well, I confess, but my love lies with literature and with culture. Like, and I think that comes across in Substack. That's why Substack's been so great, because the literary world is very hard to penetrate. If you look at the literary world versus like media, it's actually not. Media is hard, but there is a very straightforward way that I could tell someone, do you want to write for a publication? Well, come up with an idea, look at what the publication publishes. Here's an editor's email, pitch them. They might not respond, but you can always pitch again. And at some point, they might respond. The media world moves still at a pretty quick pace. And even though it's like very desiccated due to all these economic forces, there are still outlets out there. And if it's much harder to make a living at it, I do, but I started over a decade ago and I've been lucky. Um, it is somewhat straightforward. And the literary world, as someone who's grown up reading books, who lives in New York City, I can tell you, someone who grew up in New York City, it is still this very strange organism. And it really took Substack for me to have any kind of literary career or stature of any kind. Without Substack, that would not be possible. It is very hard to get into the literary space. There's a few ways in. We could talk about those. But in some ways, media for me as a young writer, I was like 22, 23 years old, trying to get published and wanting to make a living at it. Media and reporting was the way to go, because good luck getting a short story published in a big journal. I mean, good luck doing all these other things. I mean, you can. I'm not trying to be defeatist, but the traditional literary path, which has always been challenging, just got more and more and more challenging as time has gone on.
Yeah, I'm writing my first book right now. I have a deal and an agent. I went through the whole process,
Yes.
and people are like, "Oh, well, you have a following, so it was easy." I
Yeah.
tell them, like, I still had less than a 10% response rate from agents.
Yeah.
Just people saying, "Would you be willing to read a chapter?" And so it does feel impenetrable. But yeah, for media, if you want to start writing for publications, yeah, it's literally just get the right email, pitch again. Eventually, you'll get a nibble.
You mentioned like following. I mean, even now, I was putting up my novel on submission, Glass Century, back in 2023, and I had a media profile. You could look me up and see I published in prestigious outlets, and my Substack following was growing. Though I think at that time, the literary world did not recognize Substack at all.
Hmm.
This is the first year they have. I will say that I think that is shifting, but as recently as 2 years ago, no, saying I have a Substack meant nothing. And even if you have these publications, even then, your response rate is very low. I had an agent. We were on submission of the novel that I'm very proud of, that's been well reviewed. And we got rejected by over 20 publishers. And not just rejected, no response, which
Hmm.
really shocked me, having gone on submission before back in 2020 with a different agent. The novel on submission then still got personalized replies from editors, and
Hmm.
it seemed like something with the pandemic shifted, and the replies stopped coming in that way, and something had changed.
Hmm.
And it is very, very frustrating to go down that path, even with an agent. And of course, getting an agent, it is such a hurdle. And agents can be very helpful. Some are not great, some are wonderful. I'm very happy now to have a great agent, but it's a slog.
Yeah.
It's a real slog. And the beauty now of Substack, and Substack's not perfect. I don't want to turn into a Substack fanboy. But it is different. It has just opened up the so many pathways. I mean, you mentioned Alexander Sarando, name check right here. I mean, at the Metropolitan Review, the publication I co-founded, both on Substack, we have a standalone website and a print edition. You know, we published his 15,000 word, I'm trying to remember how many words it is, 15 odd thousand word profile of William Vollmann and his quest to publish the CIA novel. I mean, this is a piece that he could not get published anywhere. And to me, that's insane because it was a brilliant piece and it was so fascinating. But also kind of indicative of where the culture is that someone like Alexander Sarando, really until Substack, he didn't have the same outlets. And I feel the same way, even as someone who had conventional success in the media world, like you. I mean, I was interested in literature and the arts, and it's really gotten tougher. I think it was probably a bit easier 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now, just as the publishers contract or become conglomerates, you know, more and more mergers, you're losing kind of book review coverage. You're losing just, I think, stronger magazines.
Yeah.
You're losing like that regional literary power where it used to be, well, the South has a thriving literary movement, and now here's, you know, the Kmart realist, and some of them are out west, and then you have the New York guys, and you had kind of different little enclaves you could kind of rise out of and
Mm-hmm.
climb your way through, like, you know, getting reviewed in alternative media and small press, and then moving into maybe the mainstream. A lot of that has fallen away. So Substack offers real opportunity, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, our friend Alex, I think I was maybe the third reader of Cuba Fruit. We had another
Yeah.
mutual friend, and he sent me a free copy before it was released, and I read it, and I was like, "This is great.
Yeah,
I
it's a really
love
good book.
I love this novel." And he went through that whole slog. He had an agent who loved his
Yes.
novel. He was getting personalized rejections, and every rejection would be effusive with praise, and they would say, "We don't know where to place this." It always seemed like he's a writer who just doesn't fit into like an easy mold. Like there is no niche for him right now. But then on Substack, he can write about his fiction. Or and Alex has this great like style of writing these little vignettes that weave together in ways that you don't really understand until the end. And that shows up so well in the piece he wrote for the Metropolitan Review, the Volman profile. And then he did another one on
Daniel Lusky,
yeah, Daniel Lusky. Yeah,
another great
yeah,
piece.
yeah. And he'll just weave together all of these stories and all of these themes. And in the Daniel Lusky piece, it's about the decline of Borders, books, and music.
Yes.
And he's doing something interesting, and the current media environment doesn't know where to place him, and then he had to just go find something on his own. And I think
Yes.
that's the interesting thing. Insofar as I'm ever a fan of a platform, it's because it gives people an opportunity to do something
It,
cool.
it is the first time, as someone who has come up in digital media, who saw, you know, I'm 35, so I was starting my career at kind of the height of the 2010s digital upstarts. So what was supposed to save writing and media and did not. And it's fascinating to see with Substack, you know, again, no tech platform is perfect, but it has inculcated genuinely original writing. There are so many original writers with their own styles building real followings. I mean, from Sarando to Naomi Kanakia to John Pastelli and Henry Begler. And I could reel off, I mean, Sam Chris. I could name names forever, and they all just write. They write differently. That's what's so exciting, and you don't get this from a lot of the mainstream outlets anymore. One, there's just less room for sort of, I would call, a very loose term, literary nonfiction, right? A kind of where, or in Naomi's case, you know, she's writing this very particular type of fiction, and there just isn't like there isn't space for it out there. And I think at one time when the literary world was more robust, more multifarious, when there were more independent presses and more review coverage and more independent newspapers, and you had your Village Voices and your Boston Phoenixes and so on. I do think there was more space for that. I really do. And then you look at like new journalism and how someone like a Tom Wolfe would write, or Didion versus Gay Talese. They had very particular styles, right? they didn't all sound the same. And for the internet era, what really bothered me was it felt like there was real flatness to the prose.
Yeah, yeah.
I have really enjoyed this era much more. I really, really have. And that is because now there just seems like there's this new terrain for all these writers with like really original visions where you can't plot them on an easy left right axis.
It's gone past that kind of like voiceless, generic millennial snark
Well,
as well.
what I had a piece a few years ago. I called it Gawker speak,
Yeah, yeah.
and yet the snark voice, and that was so dominant. I think our listeners will know a bit of what we're talking about. If you go back and look at Gawker in its heyday and all the websites that came kind of out of that shadow, like very irony drenched, sort of very irony drenched, very casual. It's like humorous, but also kind of bitter. Um, and like I think when it started, there was something refreshing about it because it was in 2002, right? To read Gawker or to get the Gawker voice felt different when still, maybe it felt like the kind of New York Times style was so dominant. But then that took over the internet and everyone was doing this very kind of faux casual irony, irony speak. And I felt like the capital L literary was lost in that. I also felt like other types of idiosyncratic writing could not break through in the same way. And I also, it's not that I'm against like casual writing, but I do like a sense of style and a sense of respect for the reader, a sense of wanting to elevate the reader. And I did not think a lot of that Gawker writing, and I say Gawker writing, I'm also including the successors, the followers, into the BuzzFeed era. You go from Gawker to BuzzFeed kind of as like the dominant digital mode. And look, I mean,
Can you even
yeah,
believe, right? And then
yes,
and then it'll be some fact about a celebrity or something like this. It's that style of it's scoffing as journalism.
very, very much. A deep lack of earnestness and something in my own writing, which people have said, it's like, oh, well, you're earnest, or oh, you kind of like come out and just say like what you want, what you mean. It's like, yes, I do, and I take my work very seriously. My father once said, which I piece of advice I keep with me, take your work seriously, but not yourself. Like have a sense of humor. Don't think you're, God among men, but take your work I take my writing seriously. I think of it the way some construction worker, goes up to a building, wants to do a good job and get it right. A plumber has a task to complete. I take my writing incredibly seriously, and it felt like in that BuzzFeed Gawker era, that was not cool. It was cool to not really care. It was cool to be kind of an asshole. And of course, then you had like New Sincerity, which I guess the Gawker was the reaction to the New Sincerity. And I'm not someone who is, wants overly sentimental things either, but there is something to that mode getting very exhausting. And really beyond all that, I guess my harsher critique of it is that the Gawker BuzzFeed era did not produce writing that lasted. Now, some of that is just broken links. I mean, this is something someone pointed out to me recently. It's actually hard to find a lot of that writing. But my but is that, well, why wasn't it then collected into a book at some point? Where was the, you know, collection of best essays of the Gawker and BuzzFeed era? Maybe it exists. Maybe I'm ignorant and I have not read it. But generally speaking, that sort of writing wasn't built to last. I think the Substack writing is like the essays that a Chris or a Kanakia or Sarando or Begler produce. I mean, any of these things, they can exist alone. They can exist in print form.
The moment that Sam Chris publishes a collection, I'm pre-ordering
Oh
it.
yeah, and it'll do well.
Yeah,
And I'm just waiting for that to happen.
yeah. It has to.
It's yeah.
Or someone like John Pistelli. I really liked.
Stelly.
I
I
really
mean,
liked.
just yeah,
I really liked
great
Major
novel.
Arcana.
Great
Yeah.
novel. Yeah.
And it has this sense of, there is a sense of earnestness to it. It's also funny at times,
Yes.
and in a way that's often difficult to balance. This way of, how do I manage to bring in this humor with while also taking like the literary quality seriously.
Yes.
He just has this like one line about certain kinds of not proper scholarly academic journals, but the sort of magazines a scholar would read. And he says that it caters to male libertarians of a left and right persuasion.
Yes.
And I don't
Yes.
know why I think about this line like once a week ever
Yes.
since I read it. It's like it's just it saw something real and then it put it in just this simple way that has just made me laugh
What I
over
love
and
about
over.
that too, and it's a story I played a role in, which I was proud to. I had not read it while it was being serialized.
Mhm,
I find it hard to read fiction on the. I really with fiction I wanted to read it in print.
mhm,
So he announced he was self-publishing it and putting it into book form. So okay, I followed Pistelli a little bit actually on the recommendation of Alex Perez, another very good writer and
mhm.
fascinating character and big fan of Alex. Now editing Pan America Books and County Highway, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
starting to publish fiction, which I'm very excited about. And he said, you should check out this guy Pistelli. And so I started to subscribe to Pistelli, and I saw he was serializing this novel, but I was already like halfway through, and I wasn't going to go back and read all the serials on Substack. But then he announced he was done, and here's the link to buy my book. And I did it. I bought it with like no expectation. I read the book. I'm like, this is great. And this is better than a lot of contemporary fiction I've read. And I want to interview this guy. And on my own Substack, I did an interview with him. I offered praise for the book. And it got, because of that interview, it got republished by Belt Publishing,
Mhm.
independent publisher, which really gave it this whole second life. Because
Yeah,
it is self publishing now, I think, is more viable than ever, but it's still tough.
yeah.
It can be tough to self publish. So, seeing that happen, I mean, John kind of being the example of Substack at its best, where you have a writer who's very talented, who I think in a prior era would have been elevated just fine. I think
Mhm,
that is why we need these new ways, because there's just so many writers that were slipping through the cracks that now won't.
mhm.
And I really think the worst time for the idiosyncratic writer, the ambitious idiosyncratic writer, is probably the 2010s. You had this unique mix of the old institutions were starting to die out, and there wasn't yet a new thing to elevate people. That's how I think about it, where I found it very hard to have any kind of literary, not even career, but just like a literary entry point in my 20s. And of course, some that you're younger, but I think it also was, there just were very few ways to get your foot in the door, and there weren't really alternatives to doing the whole, I'm going to send out 50 queries, I'm going to wait, I'm going to hope that this connection of this connection of this connection comes through for me. Substack didn't exist in any meaningful form, and there wasn't really kind of like an alternative blogging network. Medium wasn't it. I'd done a little bit of Medium, nothing, it just wasn't it.
Yeah.
And now there is something happening. Naomi Kanaki has called it Substack summer, and I think it is. There is the mainstream is taking notice. This is the first year I can say the mainstream is taking Substack seriously after either sneering at it or dismissing it or claiming it's a hotbed of radicalism and Nazism, which was always insane to me. They've gone
Yeah.
through all the phases of that, and now you see the acceptance phase,
Mhm.
which is this is not going anywhere, and actually it's growing. And now you're starting to see, I mean, myself included, writing opportunities arise because of Substack, which was not really true as recently, I'd say, as 2023.
Yeah.
Like that has been been a quick shift.
So tell me a little bit about the thought that went behind founding the Metropolitan Review. Like, what are you trying to accomplish with this? Because I do think it sits in a really interesting space. It's it's long form. Pieces are usually over 3,000 words for
Yes,
me,
often are.
which on Substack is huge. I mean,
Yes,
you'll see people saying that they should be 800 words.
and they're wrong.
That's not writing at that point. Um,
Yeah.
then also, uh, you're going to have a print edition of
Yes,
this.
we are planning for a print
Yeah.
edition, hopefully this fall, like
Hmm.
maybe later fall. It's gonna be very nice. The reason we're taking our time is honestly the original idea was to do kind of not, I'm a fan of like the New York Review of Books and London Review of Books. They do like the papery
Yeah.
newspaper stuff, and that was like the first plan. And then we were like, me and my team, we have a great team, Lou Behet, Vanessa Ogle, our poetry editor, Django Ellenhorn, our fiction editor. So it's not just me. I mean, people think, oh, you are the Metropolitan Review. It's like, well, no, I'm something of a public face. We have a team
Yeah.
behind us, and they're all great. The idea was that we this is really Lou's idea, wanted to do something that would be longer lasting, that could like sit in your bookshelf. That was what she'd always say that. And she's like an arts background. Like, we want to put this on like a coffee table, a bookshelf. So we're taking our time to get it there, and we have a printer in place, and now it's really just getting these logistics in order. But yeah, we want a print edition. We do also have our own website as well, which people don't always realize, which I think helps have a bit of an independent identity too. As much as I love Substack, you are dependent on a platform. Platforms are platforms,
That's
as we
wise.
know.
That's wise.
In the tech world, right?
Yeah.
They come and they go. I hope Substack doesn't go, but having your work sit elsewhere is just something you do.
Yeah.
So there are a few ways to think about it, I would say. One, I was someone growing up in New York on the lore of the old literary magazines and journals. My father revered the New York Review of Books, the old Village Voice, known for its literary supplement. A lot of writers coming through these publications and really allowed to write in their own voice. That was very important to me. I want a publication, one that's going to review books, because it is harder and harder to get books reviewed, and that really bothers me. That the only way now, it seems like, to get a book review is to get it into some type of discourse. Even with Glass Century, my own novel, I did get straight reviews. I did, and I was happy about that. But really, I mean, to get it to that next level where people were really starting to talk about it, it did feel I had to kind of get it into some type of discourse. And I was able to, because I am sappy, or I don't know, cynical in that way.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I wanted a publication that, no, we don't just review books when there's just merely some political or discourse argument to make. Now, you want to make the argument, that's great, but we're also just going to review books. Secondly, this was big too, a publication lets the writer be the writer. We do edit at the Metropolitan Review. We edit quite a bit.
And that's great.
Yeah. But the but is, never will I edit to erase someone's voice. If you write for the Metropolitan Review, you will sound like yourself. And I'm proud to say any piece will sound like the writer. And that, I think, is very discombobulating to a certain type of literary person who is used to the homogeny of like a digital publication and doesn't know the history of, again, like a Village Voice, where in any given week you could have a libertarian writer, you could have a Marxist writer, you could have a critic who despised jazz, a critic who loved jazz, a critic who loved rap, a critic who hated rap, and they could all be under the same roof and writing in very different styles.
Yeah.
That was common. And one of my arguments for the Met Review would be, well, we don't have a single house style. And that in the beginning was understood by most people, but there definitely was a type of literary person, a kind of person sort of raised in a certain manner, who struggled with that concept, where the idea is, oh, this piece is not like this piece. That means it's like the Met Review doesn't do any editing at all. And it's like, well, no, we do editing. We just believe in having diversity of style. Imagine that. And viewpoint and style. And doing reviews, doing essays, publishing fiction and poetry. We've started to do that, which I'm very happy about. We've excerpted novels. We've had a short story from Sherman Alexie, which was incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's something I love about it too, elevating those new voices, which is something, for whatever reason, the prestige magazines stopped being interested in. Naomi Kanakia told me this not long ago. The New Yorker does not pick short stories from the slush pile anymore.
Yeah, they haven't for like a decade,
which
or even longer.
Is insane. Can you imagine if that policy existed in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? Can you imagine how many voices would have been unrecognized if that was the approach literary institutions took in those decades? The Paris Review started to give voice to young, ambitious writers. Some of them were on the way to being very prestigious, But still, I mean, they discover, Philip Roth publishes his first short stories in the Paris Review. I mean, the New Yorker also was publishing Roth in his 20s. I mean, Updike starting in the New Yorker, I think, like right out of college. I mean, there was this spirit of, we want to find the next generation. We want to build a culture and a canon. And that just stopped.
Yeah.
And I don't get it. It confuses me. I opened the New York Review books. Great respect to them. It's 7 professors
Yeah.
at various Ivy League or Ivy League adjacent universities, and a few writers they always publish. And that's it. And that's
like
every issue.
Look, I like Jill Lepore, but I've read a Jill Lepore.
We've read it, and we know what she's going to say. And you could set your watch to it.
Yeah.
A lot of these, you can set your watch to a lot of these writers, and nothing against them, but you can't build a vigorous culture that way. And that's why I love the Metropolitan Review, what we've been able to done. And they ask me, well, I do a lot of other things. I do this too. It's like, how do you do it? Is it hard? I'm like, it's easy. You know why it's easy? Because on Substack, there's this massive reservoir of talent, and all I have to do is ask them to write something, or they can come to me, and we've pieces for months. I mean, we have so many pieces. We're struggling to publish them all, and they're all good. They're all really good.
I think that the choice that you're making with the Metropolitan Review to have this really kind of premium printing is probably the right one. I'm noticing this too with I read a lot of science fiction,
Yes.
and a lot of science fiction authors or fantasy authors as well. In fact, I think Lincoln Mitchell who wrote Metallic Realms, he recently has this. You kind of expect that your book's not going to sell very well these days unless you get big on TikTok.
Yes.
But you make your money by then later printing 1,500 copies of like an ultra premium edition of your book.
That's amazing.
And then your fans buy that.
It's a great idea.
And if you can sell it for $70, and you're going to make 4 times the amount of money as an author if you can sell it like that.
Totally.
And then you only need 1,500 people to buy it.
Exactly.
And then suddenly the book's worth it. Just find it. You can feed your family while you write the next one.
Yes.
Where, we're not going to see like a return to like the old paperback era where you could make a living just churning out lots of science fiction paperbacks over the weekend. But it's kind of an expectation that maybe what you do is you publish, most people are going to read on Kindle. Most people are going to read on Kindle Unlimited, or they're going to find a way to pirate, a digital copy because it doesn't feel real.
Right.
But then you're going to cultivate a fan base who will then pay for the real thing. And they don't just want a hardback.
Exactly.
They want like a really luxurious item they can put on their shelf and say, I like that thing.
Exactly.
And I think with the Metropolitan Review, the majority of your subscribers on Substack won't become paid subscribers.
Yes.
It's like that everywhere.
Yes.
Lots of people read the Times for free too. But the people who do pay, and I pledged fairly early for the Metropolitan
we're
Review.
turning on pledges soon.
So, all right, I whatever it was like I said, I would pay this, on Substack's functionality, and I would be really happy to get something, especially if I started recognizing the names on it a little bit, or like, oh, I saw this person wrote a small piece and now they're doing this. How cool.
Yes.
And then to put it on my shelf. Yeah, I think, or to put it on my coffee table, to hand it to someone else and say, I think you'd really like this. Where when I've subscribed to the New York Review of Books, they mostly go in the recycling.
Disposable.
Yeah. I mean, it's made to be disposable. And I think what we're seeing is maybe a kind of bifurcation in the media ecosystem. And I also think this plays into your discussion of length, where more and more people want to consume things for free. But for the things they really love, they're willing to pay a premium for. And I think this also goes with length because more and more people are consuming YouTube shorts or just blog posts that frankly should have been a single tweet.
Yeah.
They want hyper condensed content. But then for something they really care about, what I think is actually we're gonna lose is the middle length piece, the 2,000 word piece. And honestly, that's fine by me. They want, give me 10,000 words on this. One of the number one criticisms I've gotten on my YouTube channel from commenters who like me, they say is, Jared, this was really cool, but it was 18 minutes. And, could you make it 45 next time? Because you could explore it in so much depth. And I had always been taught, cut everything. I grew up, you and I are the same age, grew up reading the stuff on the internet that it was like, okay, this BuzzFeed piece is 500 words and it's got 4 section headings. And I grew up thinking that was how you made content for an audience. But it turns out for people who really care, for the people who give a damn, and those are the people you often want to write for, they want length, they want depth.
Totally.
And they want to see that you give a damn too.
I have told people repeatedly my best performing Substack pieces are the longest one.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean you just type out slop
Yeah.
for 7,000 words. That means, no, those are the pieces you invested the most care in.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the pieces that you are allowed to be the most digressive on,
Mm-hmm.
and to really explore a topic to its limits. Because yes, if people like you and are invested in you, they want more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have something to say, they want to hear it, and they don't want to feel cheated too. And so exactly, like, you can put out a video um, on a topic that people care about, and they'll stick with you for the hour or more. And it's the same way across the written word. And one of my frustrations with literary fiction now is new novels are too short.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like every time I go to buy a novel, it's 282 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's 310. I mean, the idea of publishing Infinite Jest, forget about it.
Yeah.
But even my own novel, 482 pages, and that was a real battle to get sold, a real battle. And it's not that long, historically
Yeah.
speaking, at all.
I would have called that kind of the upper end of a middle length novel at one
Yes.
point. I wouldn't have even called it a long novel
Yes.
15 years ago.
Would not have been.
Maybe it's a little bit longer than like a Philip Roth book or something, but
And some Roth books were longer.
yeah, but it has time to explore a story, and you're
Yes.
telling a story that takes place over 20 years,
Or
or no,
more.
50
Yeah,
years,
50,
sorry,
yeah, yeah.
50 years. And so you need a little bit of time. You need
You need it,
you
yeah.
need you need the length.
And
Yeah, I read your piece on length about the length of
yes.
books, and I decided to look it up. The winner of a recent Booker Prize was Orbital.
Orbital, it's a short one.
Orbital is 144 pages. One book that kind of blew up after being translated. It's a little bit older. I Who Have Never Known Men. It's under 200 pages.
Mm-hmm.
There's all of these novels that it seems as if the author was told, cut everything you
Yes.
can. And there's kind of a weirdness too with modern writing, because it's like, write really short books and
Yeah.
also pack them with sensory detail.
Yes, yes,
And you would
yes.
think that those things would be intention.
Yes.
Because if you pack every page full of sensory detail, where's the story? Or
There's not much.
or where's the emotion?
There's not much.
Where are the themes? But that's where
Not much world building.
yeah. And you go, how can I get into this character's head? Because you've spent 2 of your 150
You don't.
pages telling me about what they're drinking.
Orbital is an example of that, where it's a lot of pretty writing, and the characters are ciphers, and you barely know them, and you understand the outlines of who they are, and then the book ends.
Yeah.
And that is a great frustration for me. I also am annoyed because I feel like so much of the publishing world is built on folk wisdom. Like, you think, oh, these are grim technocrats who have crunched the numbers and know this sells and this doesn't.
Yeah.
But okay, so was there a time in, let's say, 2017, I'm just making up a year, where a bunch of novels that were 600 pages were released and they all bombed? And then did they decide, oh, I guess these like Bonfire of the Vanity style novels all bombed together, we can't publish them anymore? And well, no, that never happened. There was not like this A/B testing, so to speak, of novels where the long ones failed and the short ones rocketed to success. And if that happened, at least you could then, at least as you argued for the longer book, you could accept the logic a little bit, but that logic doesn't exist. There was no flop of a massive novel or novels that then the short novels took off. And one reason they publish shorter novels, I know this from talking to Bret Easton Ellis about this, it's cost. They cost more money.
Yeah.
Bret Easton Ellis had The Shards, his most recent novel, which is quite good. And it came out a few years ago, and he told me, and I was really surprised by this, that Knopf, which has been his publisher for decades, one of the major publishers in the world, was resistant. They wanted him to cut it, and he fought. He fought to get it at the length he wanted. He wanted to have real explorations of sexuality and violence and character building, and he wanted these scenes in the book, and he was Bret Easton Ellis, so he won the fight. but he had to fight, and that shows you Bret Easton Ellis, who's almost a guaranteed bestseller at this point, if he has to battle with Knopf, my God, I
Yeah.
mean, what is going on here? And they are afraid of costs. It costs less to print an orbital, and they figure, and this is where maybe the technocrats come in. Let's just print a bunch of short books. Maybe they'll all bomb, but if one takes off, it costs less money, and then we can reap that windfall, I suppose. But you get a lesser literature out of it, and I think you also get a frustrated readership where there's a lot of readers now who they want to invest in a novel. And the one area you do see length, and I'm not a reader of it, but I know this, is romantasy.
Yeah.
And I assume sci-fi books do still come in fairly long. Are they getting shorter too?
They're getting shorter.
They're coming in shorter.
And you see that
Yeah.
publishers are a little more resistant to giving new authors series up front as well, where it used to be very common. Here's a trilogy, here's a five book series, or like for a big epic fantasy or something like this. That's not really being done as much. And there is kind of this push, for 250 pages,
sad at sci-fi too.
300 pages. These things where you're supposed to be going into like different worlds or something.
Right. A brief sci-fi novel seems.
It's a kind of weird mix too of kind of minimalist prose or like really simple syntax, but then mixed in with like overly sentimental moods as well in a lot of this. And it goes, it's like, oh, you give me no interesting sentences, but then you give me some sentiment I'm supposed to latch onto in a paragraph or something, in a way that does, candy might be the right feeling. It's a small portion and it feels overly sweet.
I'm so glad. I mean, I just don't miss that era. Like I lived it. I worked in it. I saw what social media at its peak did to writers and publications. And I mean, Elon Musk did the media and writers largely a favor when he bought Twitter, renamed it X, and reformed it in such a way that it was going to promote right-wing content and throttle outside links and take away Twitter's centrality to the culture. Twitter in the 2010s was very central. It really was the water cooler where journalists, celebrities, publishers, politicians, everyone was swirling in the mix, right, left, together. There's something nice town square aspect to it, but then it created all these very noxious incentives where the loudest, the most incendiary, the person who really wanted to cut down someone else, that type of combat, really petty combat, not literary combat, shallow combat, became quite common. And now that's gone. Twitter has lost its ability to instigate a pylon, a cancellation, an attempted cancellation. It's just over. It's over. I mean, I still use it out of habit, but it's done. It's done as a cultural force. And that is a good thing. And that is why I think now you see the benefits of a Substack or even a YouTube too, where one can do longer videos and longer pieces, because the tweet, one cannot be nuanced in 140 characters. One is by definition memeing. One is by definition propagandizing. I mean, you think about the writer on Twitter, you're a politician. You're speaking in slogan. I'm guilty of it myself. Being on Twitter, I'm guilty. I'm not absolving myself. That's why I love other forms of writing far more, because I don't feel that way writing a 3,000 word essay, 4,000 word essay.
Let's talk about one thing that was very distinctive of Twitter at its heyday. And I actually think this ties into your novel very well. So we can actually talk a little bit about Glass Century. And that was this rise of, I would call it, I don't want to say identity politics, because that's kind of always been with us, but it was almost like an identity first kind of politics, right? Like you started by declaiming, here is my intersectionality, here are my various identity markers, and we would invent new ones at times or invent new intersections to find. And that really took off on Twitter. And I've just noticed that in the broader culture, it's just kind of waning away. We still see it somewhat, but it's not nearly as powerful as it was in, say, like a 2019 or so. And actually, as I was reading Glass Century, one of the things I thought was really interesting about the way that you wrote it was that there's almost this kind of ambivalence about identity throughout the book. So very early on, we don't have to go into too many things about what happened in the book, but the book starts with a fake wedding between Mona and Saul, and there are these little conversations between various people. One of them between Mona and Saul, where people kind of make you know what their ethnic background is, and you'll find out the difference between like Jews and Italians. But then you'll find out from Saul the difference between German Jews and Russian Jews. Okay, so you're like, wow, this is like an identity first book, you might think. But your main character, Mona, or so this prominent character throughout the book, she kind of doesn't care. She's the most ambivalent about it. She can't even be bothered to learn the English translation of the wedding vows.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I thought it was this really interesting thought, and I'm curious if it was intentional and where you want to kind of go with this,
Yeah.
where it was almost a sort of navigating what it's like to write in a sort of post identity politics or post the
Yeah.
height of identity politics.
Yeah. So I think it's a really good point. And I was writing it in 2020. So the funny thing is I was writing it in a cauldron of identity. But I think I myself have always felt very ambivalent about it in that I am Jewish. I am secular Jew. I had a bar mitzvah and did a little Hebrew school, but I never like identified myself first as a Jew or even as like a white person. I always felt kind of I am me and my interests.
Mm-hmm.
And and some would say that's a luxury and a privilege of being a white male in America, and I accept that. That's fine. Um, at the same time, I think having grown up in New York City, I always understood identity was very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
That when one person on Twitter proclaims whiteness as this category, I go, wait a second. I grew up in an Irish Catholic neighborhood, and the Irish Catholics, the Italian Catholics, the Jews
Mm-hmm.
were not all in a single blob of whiteness.
Yeah.
In fact, those differences were quite distinct. Religious differences, of course, cultural differences, and I was coming up in the 1990s and 2000s, so I didn't experience fierce anti-Semitism, but I experienced soft anti-Semitism of the stray Holocaust joke, or questions about what you do in Christmas and things like that. And so that growing up in a diverse area, and my neighborhood's also very Greek, it's very Middle Eastern, Asian. It's really quite a polyglot, as most New York City neighborhoods are. And you learn that at an early age, that this concept of identity as practiced in academia or on Twitter circa 2019 just does not fit the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Black identity. Now, if you live in New York City, the African American and the Afro Caribbean are quite distinct. One being from Haiti, one being from Jamaica, versus one having grown up in New York City and their parents grew up in New York City and their grandparents came out of Georgia. Entirely different traditions.
Yeah.
And in fact, there will not be that much solidarity between them.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, one group might dislike another group. And that's true across the board. The Asian bloc. Well, no, you grew up in New York City. There's Chinese and there's Korean, and they're not the same. Don't lump them together. And I can do this all day. And you mentioned the Jews, and the Jewish distinction is one I knew historically. I didn't grow up really with a great difference between the German and the Russian Jew, but I knew my history. My parents, knew their history too, and I understood that the German Jew and the Russian Jew were in fact quite distinct.
Mm-hmm.
That I am descended from the Russian Jews, the Eastern European Jews, the Jews who came from really the pogroms of the 19th century, the waves of anti-Semitic violence in Russia and Eastern Europe. And they fled here during the era of mass unchecked immigration. That's why I'm always going to be pro-immigrant, because I myself descend from an open borders immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
All my ancestors came through Ellis Island. They got their little health check and they were sent on their way to some Lower East Side ghetto or some other, New York City area.
So it's a little similar, more similar to Saw in the book.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so the Russian Eastern European Jew, yeah. So I imagine him descending from that. Mona as well,
Hmm.
but also, and now the German Jew was the Jew that came usually prior to that wave.
Yeah.
So you had similar time or before, and there's a class distinction.
Hmm.
The German Jew is very assimilated. The German Jew was wealthier. The German Jew they tend to live, it was his neighborhood in Yorkville in the Upper East Side. They tended to have a bit more money. They also tended to be almost Christian passing, WASP passing.
I
San Francisco actually had a very distinct German Jewish community where they almost blended in very well with the WASPs, whereas the Russian Eastern European Jew were looked down upon not so much.
Yeah, I think Saul uses the phrase "barely part of the tribe" earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how the German Jew is seen. Dianne Feinstein, the late senator from California, she actually is a great example of that. She was a German Jew who grew up in San Francisco, and she attended a Catholic school.
Hmm.
And that was something that was not uncommon if you were sort of part of this older families had come in the 19th century, had really assimilated in, had money, had property, and they didn't feel great solidarity with these other Jews coming in speaking Yiddish, speaking Russian, speaking Polish, coming out of these very poor villages, fleeing these various upheavals in the
Hmm.
late 19th century. And you saw this too in the politics of it, that Russian Eastern European Jew was usually politically very radical.
Hmm.
That's where a lot of communism and socialism came to America. It was through these Jewish immigrants, settling a lot of them in New York City. Some went to the Midwest, and they brought a very distinct political view. Much of 20th century culture was built by these Jews. Hollywood, all Eastern European Jews, Warner Brothers,
Hmm.
Jews. Um, you know, American literature. I mean, this is Roth's descendants are these Eastern European Jews. Malama. These waves of immigration really feed America, and it's their sons and grandsons who build up really literature, TV, cinema. It's amazing what came of that. So
I
yes, in the book, I was
Yeah.
thinking a lot about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Ayn Rand is the funniest example.
Yes. Yeah, Ayn Rand too.
um, yeah, but I liked it because
Yeah.
it was like a book that took identity seriously,
Yes.
but didn't make it the only focus.
Yes.
And I think that as we think about whatever we think the sort of, I hate the words, right? But like the sort of whatever comes after the sort of peak wokeness or
Mhm.
identity politics, I certainly don't want to sort of tie my wagon to the sort of rabid anti-woke crowds.
Exactly.
But whatever comes after this, right? Which frankly might involve just remembering what it's like to be an American
Yes.
who lives in a multicultural
Yes,
society,
that's it, yeah.
especially if you're sort of an urban American of some kind.
Yes.
You live in a city. Like we have to do that kind of thinking, and it's not like we're going to ever obliterate those identity distinctions, but at the same time, we have to figure out what it's like to live together. And again, yeah, taking it seriously, but
Yeah.
not making it the only thing that
Yes,
matters.
I have found the woke anti-woke binary very exhausting, and I've written, I've written critically of woke, and also of late I've written critically of anti-woke because the anti-woke side, they're trapped in the same identity game. They now are obsessed with, through identity, reifying other groups.
Mhm.
You see kind of the anti-woke alliance around Israel, where
Mhm.
they use the same arguments they would have derided about protecting black identity, let's say. Now it's the precious pro-Israel Jew who must be safeguarded on college campuses, and I think that's all very silly. I agree. I mean, I think we need to move back to universal values. There's a very healthy way to talk about identity. It's that no doubt identity plays a role in all of us. It has defined American history.
Yeah.
You cannot talk about American history without identity. You cannot talk about American history without the sins of slavery. I just walked before we recorded this yesterday to the Texas Capitol, and I
Mhm.
went into the Capitol building, and this was very interesting as a Northerner to see this. I
Mhm.
come out of the Capitol building, and I find a Confederate monument sitting right there
Mhm.
on the Capitol, uh, talking about the glory of states' rights
Mhm.
and the men who fought for this cause, and it sits there very distinctly, um, a block away from an Austin Pride flag.
Yeah.
So I find the anti woke pause, the anti woke posture, I find very exhausting. That seeks to dismiss these sins of the past. One cannot dismiss them. Now, the woke side says the past is forever, and we also have to acknowledge progress. And I believe in acknowledging progress. We are not the same society we were in 1965 or
Mhm.
1865. At the same time, both woke and anti-woke seek to rewrite history for their own aims. The woke side seeks to make America a land of great terror and failure, and um, one that keeps every basically non-white group in shackles to the present day, and that's not true. America is a very complicated country. It's waves of racism, it's waves of anti-immigrant sentiment, it's also waves of uplift, and it's waves of attempting to establish universal values. And we
Mhm.
have the Civil Rights Act. We've made progress on gay rights. We've made progress on anti-Semitism, and we've made progress on racism too. We are a less racist country in 2025 than we've ever been, and then the woke side cannot concede that.
Mhm.
At the same time, you have the Christopher Rufos of the world, and I truly have distaste for them, who want to create a kind of fake American history that purges the discussion of really virulent episodes and topics from curriculums. In the Rufo style curriculum, one is not going to learn about the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. At least I don't think they will. They're not going to learn all about the degradations of not just slavery, but the post Reconstruction Jim Crow era and beyond too. The fact is that into the when Reconstruction collapses, you have a period of almost 100 more years that were de facto slavery in the United States of America. Would the Rufo curriculum teach that we had a white supremacist president in Woodrow Wilson, a real white supremacist? I'm not
Mhm.
using it in the woke terminology where everyone's a racist, everyone's a white supremacist. It's like, oh no, this man was a literal white supremacist. I don't know. Maybe the Rufo curriculum finds a place for that. So I find a lot of these discussions come from people who just don't know American history that well.
Mhm.
Um, Woke and anti-woke both, where they'll just like argue things like they just discovered them or just don't know the arc and progression. It really helps to just. I'm lucky. I was fortunate that both my parents, um, they were adjunct history professors, and they inculcated in me at a very early age understanding of American history.
Mhm.
And so at no point I never had like this phase of I became greatly disillusioned or um changed by what I learned, because I learned at a very early age just about the Civil War, about what came afterwards. I was 12 years old. I knew what Reconstruction was. So I find a lot of the woke anti woke dialogue very ahistorical,
Mhm.
and I want to move past it, and I want to look at America for what it is, which is a very flawed country. It's a country that if I could wave a magic wand, I would change. I would get these guns out.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
get us all universal health care. But at the same time, there's many things America has done well. It's a dynamic country. It's a country that does multiculturalism quite well relative to most countries on planet Earth.
Mhm.
I will defend, especially having traveled a bit, the way America is able to assimilate
Mhm.
different groups, the way we are not anguished over immigration in the same ways European countries are. Even now with Trump in the White House, I'll say this, you're seeing people now, because Trump is overreaching so much, they're now developing more positive views again of immigration. I think remembering why immigrant waves throughout history have made America stronger. And that is the history of the United States. It's
Mhm.
every single new immigrant wave bringing dynamism
Mhm.
with them.
Yeah.
Because who wants to come to America? It's the most ambitious people.
Mhm.
It's why I hate the anti-immigrant rhetoric so much. Because so you're saying the person who risked their lives and came thousands of miles from their war-torn country or hundreds of miles is less ambitious and lazy than the Native born American who got everything handed to them. Well, of
Mhm.
course not. They're the ones who want to work. And again, like I am descended from these immigrants, these Jewish immigrants who came here and wanted to work and helped build the culture of the 20th century. I'm very proud of that. So I say, let these people in.
Well, one of my favorite sort of cultural institutions in the United States, is the Library of America. Like, just
Yes.
the like and
Yeah.
I kind of wonder, like,
Yeah.
why doesn't every country have a publisher
Yeah.
that does this?
Yeah.
And I love the fact that in the Library of America, you can read the foundational documents of the United States. You can read Black writers writing during Reconstruction. You can read, New York City Jews writing in the 70s,
It's remarkable.
and, the breadth and quality of American literature that kind
Yes.
of follows the arc of the history
Yes.
is one of the things that makes me very proud to be an American. Like,
Yes.
and I look at this, I have so many Library of America volumes, and I look at them and go, it's a beautiful thing. Even when you're reading Frederick Douglass, like maybe the best orator the United States has ever
Yes.
produced, and all of it is about the horrors of what America is doing. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, but you have to take that seriously
and
too,
and
yeah.
and even Douglas is a great example of someone where um the woke anti-woke binary fails because the anti-wokes don't want to promote to too great a degree someone like Frederick Douglass, who's writing in very visceral detail on the horrors of the United States and slavery. But the wokes don't understand that Frederick Douglass still believed in this country,
Mhm,
that Frederick Douglass was here. He wanted to make it a better country. He
mhm,
was fighting throughout his lifetime, understanding that through his activism, through dealing with the political establishment, through his relationship with political leaders, he could slowly move
yeah,
move the needle. Something I really disliked about the new Percival Everett book, James, which as someone who's a great admirer of Everett,
mhm,
I was disappointed by. I thought it was a lousy book, and I think I have many thoughts about it. It was a deeply pessimistic book,
yeah, yeah,
and as someone like you who's read slave narratives, I've taken in college. I took a class in 19th century literature. I've read a decent number of them over my lifetime. What the pessimism of a James misses, what the wokes miss, is if you read slave narratives, there is great despair and darkness in all of them. But even in these narratives, they believe if they around or, for example, saw the Civil War, they wanted the North to win.
mhm,
They hoped that the country could do better by them. In James the novel, Jim is there's some line. He's very disconnected from it. He's this high intellectual now with Huck, and he has some aside about how it doesn't matter North versus South. It's a very kind of modern Afro pessimist view that
yeah,
this struggle means nothing because we're slaves no matter what. I'm like, well, wait a second. No slave narrative reflects this at all. No, the Civil War meant a lot to them, and getting Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation meant a lot. I mean, the whole Reconstruction era, why I'm so fascinated by it, it was one of the real it was it was a real moral bright spot in that there was this point in American history right after the Civil War where white men and black men as well tried to work together to right the wrongs of slavery in the Civil War. And for a period, it was a short period and it was destroyed. That's how you got Jim Crow. There was a real attempt to make America a more equal country, to
mhm,
change the laws, to enforce it, to go down into the South and say, no, we are going to have a multiracial country.
mhm,
And there were black politicians in this era. There were radical Republicans, they call them, who are fighting for equality. And there were men like Frederick Douglass playing crucial role in all of it. And it comes to a screeching halt in the 1870s with the election of 1876, and it ends. And for a while, we had a real rewriting of that history. Southerners, Texans included,
Mhm.
made Reconstruction out to this great boondoggle, this great failure, and
Mhm.
the real rulers came in and set things right, and the South was this victim, and you have the whole lost cause mythology. And
We it was literally the invention of things like the Southern Catechism, where you would just teach kids how to repeat back questions about history, and it would be
yeah,
about, like, did slave owners mistreat their slaves? And
yeah,
and the child's response was supposed to be, "No, they loved their," like,
they loved them.
yeah,
They
yeah,
loved
yeah,
it. They
yeah,
were all
yeah, yeah, yeah,
happy.
yeah.
They were happy on there. So you just see throughout American history that there's this push pull. I mean that's what it is. It's cycles. It's battles. It is great terror and great failure mixed with great hope
Mhm.
and great success. And that is the story of America that should be told, because that is the story of America. And unfortunately, we have just seen in the current politics and the past politics too, the extremes,
Yeah.
the those who only want to emphasize. Because look, if you only want to emphasize the sin of America, you can do it. You can say we dropped 2 atomic bombs, we were a slave-holding country.
And you can write some very long books.
You can,
Mm,
and those books would be correct,
yeah.
but it's not the whole story. And just as the anti-wokes don't have the whole story either, where they want to create. I mean, I don't even know like what story they want to tell. Just racism didn't matter, like sexism didn't matter. I mean, women couldn't vote till 1920. I mean, of course it all mattered.
Oh, there was a recent CNN segment actually about how,
Yeah,
from some, Christian nationalist in, Iowa,
yeah,
their position was actually we should go back literally to that and reinstate household voting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean,
So,
people who want that, and
people
and
think it, yeah,
and as Kamala Harris said, we are not going back. I mean, that's
yeah,
one
yeah.
thing about America. I mean, look, we see with Trump, there's a real attempt at regression, but we have the franchise. Everyone can vote. That will remain.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, like with any president or any regime, again, if you study history, you know the long arc of it. It's why I'm always thinking ahead too. Where I'm not saying that I'm not downplaying Trump by any means, but it's why I say there'll be an America after Trump, because one day there will be a different president,
Mhm.
a Democrat or Republican, and parties evolve.
Yeah.
Issues evolve. I mean, if we were sitting here in 2011, the president of the United States, a Democrat, would not have supported a same-sex marriage.
Mhm.
People don't understand how that issue used to be viewed, where Barack Obama, not until the year 2012 did he affirm he supported gay people being able to legally marry. 2012 was not that long ago.
The first lady is an immigrant. The second lady
First
is
ladies,
the second
right?
lady, is an Indian American. Nobody brings this up,
And
or
then
well, almost.
and the president's grandkids are Jews
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
through
president Drake
Ivanka and Jared.
and the vice president's Catholic. And if you look
And
at this,
I mean, there you go.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, the Catholic, right? And we just had a Catholic president, Biden,
yeah,
and that again, yeah, right. Go back to 1960. The idea of electing a Catholic president was its own radical act.
yeah.
So you see this repeatedly. We obviously had a black president. I think we're going to inevitably in the future have a woman president. It will
Mhm.
happen. Could be a Republican woman president, which would be for the left not so exciting.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually think that's more likely.
yeah, I mean, all the conservative in the UK, all the conservative prime
Yeah,
ministers are they've all been women. There's been no Labour female prime minister. Yeah, and the leaders in the conservative movement are women. Marjorie
yeah,
Taylor Greene, right? She sits in kind of the top of this MAGA pyramid, and there's no one is questioning that the woman can't be
yeah,
leading
yeah.
a far right movement, and of course in the left. I mean, there's plenty of non-white and female politicians. So I mean, it just the world evolves, it changes, and that doesn't mean we don't have a lot of issues we have to address. It doesn't mean there's a lot of great tragedies in this nation. It doesn't mean we don't have great income inequality, for example. We don't have racism. We do. We don't have sexism. We do. We don't have segregation. We still do. We have housing segregation. The
Yeah.
legacy of racism, of 20th century racism, which the anti-wokes won't talk about, is that we have deep-seated housing segregation in America because you had redlining. And
Mhm.
home ownership is how you pass on wealth, and there's no doubt white homeowners had a huge leg up in this country, inheriting homes.
So I want to ask you a little bit about something that you've been developing in some writing, but what you were calling the new romanticism. And there's this quote I grabbed from one of your pieces that I want to read here, that we are fattened, bloody flesh sacks, doomed to obsolescence, pacified by programs that will do all the thinking and feeling for us. If we stop thinking, what is left? To submit, to putter along like amoebae. So that's you writing about AI in the middle of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
piece. And I'm just curious, do you want to tell us how you really feel?
The new romanticism is very interesting to me. I actually is Ted Gioia who kind of originated the idea, and it drew me in right away. I think it captures this general mood amongst certain people,
Hmm.
not everyone, but definitely a growing number of people that are very disenchanted with technology as it stands today,
Hmm.
technology's impact on the culture, that are looking to, in some ways, a return to older forms,
Hmm.
a return to a more interpersonal and in-person dynamic, a real turn away from techno optimism. If you look at the 2010s, for example, it was very much characterized by every new development coming from a Silicon Valley giant is going to make our lives extraordinarily better. You see how the media treated these developments. You see how um, the average person, received the iPhone. You see how someone like a Steve Jobs was really hero worshipped in his heyday. And now you look at how tech is viewed today, quite different. And there is, I believe, a yearning for new forms of connecting, forms that are outside of algorithms, that are outside of platforms. I believe that we are in a space where we understand technology's ill effects, like the smartphone. And now with AI is very interesting to me because I have been really trying to find the best good faith case for AI and what AI is doing.
Hmm.
And I confess that as a creative person, I struggle with it. And my struggle is not whether to use it or not. I just don't. I don't really see the point. But it's that if you're a writer, a painter, a poet, a musician, we've all used technologies. We use computers, right? I mean, we have drum machines. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not anti-tech. I use tech. But why do you need a machine to do the actual creating? Why is it for tens of thousands of years humanity, which could paint paintings, which could write novels, and which could imagine the human imagination, the human soul, something that, despite all the challenges of the world and the various cataclysms that come in modern civilization, that is persisted. This real tension to the soul.
Hmm.
Why do you need a machine to replace that? Now, I get why you need a machine to lift a heavy object. I get why you need a machine to do complex mathematical calculations. I get why you need a machine to do medical exams. I'm very supportive of modern medicine. I think it's great. Our lifespans have increased. We need machines for many, many things to record this podcast, to broadcast electronically. We this video. We need machines for many things. But the act of creation, and this was very interesting to me. The proponents of AI don't really explain why, the Sam Altmans in particular, you need a machine to make either what is now very mediocre art. Perhaps one day it'll get good.
Hmm. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't reject that
Yeah.
notion. Machines evolve. At some point, the AI might belch out a passable novel that one could read and feel good about.
Yeah.
No?
This
Yeah.
is a really important point, and I'll
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
you then continue. I see so many people say, well, AI will never make great art. It's- I
Oh, it
don't know.
might.
And
It
maybe it
might.
will,
Maybe it
but I
will.
think then there's still an argument to be made for not using it to
It,
make art.
I use the example of jogging
Hmm.
I find physical. I grew up playing sports. I grew up playing baseball and tennis and um handball and I still like to play sports and
Mhm.
follow it. If you want to get better at a sport, what do? You practice.
Yeah.
You get in the reps. You take swings in the batting cage. You shoot hoops. You shoot thousands of shots. You dribble. You hit tennis balls. If you want to get good at tennis, you train, right? A machine can do all these things. A machine can hit a tennis ball. A machine can shoot a basket for you. Um, why jog around a track when I can just take an e-scooter and go even faster around the track? The
Yeah.
e-scooter can take me around the track. Well, no, we do these things to strengthen ourselves. Even if we're not professional athletes and we're amateurs, and I'm an amateur, we want to make ourselves stronger.
Mhm.
And if one offshores creation to AI, if one wants that future, Sam Altman, let's say, wants that future where you press a button, the novel comes out, you'll never learn how to write.
Mhm.
You'll never learn how to think. You'll never learn how to imagine. The imagination is so crucial for the artist. The fact that you need time to sit and think and dream. And if this all goes away, we will be infantilized. There will be no audience. There will be no creator. And we will be like those little, people in the matrix pods in the amniotic fluid
Mhm.
sacs. And that seems to be what the AI proponents on the creative side are pushing. Now, I'm not arguing with those who say it can make these medical breakthroughs. It can make these ways to do computations that will perhaps revolutionize technology in some way. Okay, I
Yeah.
can see that. That's fine. I want us to get technologically more proficient. I want us to live longer. I believe in progress. But why do I need an AI to make a picture or a painting? I don't understand. We have human beings who do it wonderfully. And and someone who is very enthusiastic about AI tools, AI helps me write, AI helps me paint, AI does this, AI does okay. So great. How are you gonna get better? I'm
Mhm.
a writer. I write every day. I have written at this point, I could not tell you. I've published millions of words, but the unpublished amount of words I have probably can total into the millions too. I've written novels that'll never see the light of day.
Yeah.
I have pieces, sitting in draft folders. I write.
In the case of students
Yeah,
cheating with
yeah,
AI,
yeah,
I think that just stems from. AI actually, I think it has very little to do with it. It's because students historically, especially when we pushed for more and more people to go to college and saw it as like, this is your path to a middle
exactly.
class life, they just don't give a
They
damn
don't give a
about
damn.
Shakespeare. And
Yeah.
so, but they're told they have to take a class on Shakespeare. So what they're doing, in a way, they're actually doing with AI exactly what I want people to do with it, which is take the stuff you don't care about
Mm,
and let AI do the easy work. Now, the
yes.
problem is that your education is supposed to matter. It's supposed to develop you as a person, but we sold out that vision way before AI. We
Yeah.
like,
Well, that's
yeah,
the colleges and the universities stopped believing in themselves,
yeah,
and they stopped believing in their mission, and they became they became addicted to various gimmicks
yeah,
to raise money,
yeah.
to be job factories, so to speak, though they
Exactly.
aren't necessarily job factories.
They're middle class vocational training. They're
Yes,
basically, well, I'm going to train you so that you can go work in HR, so that you can
yes,
go work in entry level CS, so that you
yes.
can go and eventually become a product manager.
Which, of course, now where AI is making a real impact is taking those jobs away. Now
Mhm.
that is real. AI is decimating the white collar workforce, and ironically, computer
Yeah,
scientists, they'll learn to code people, which I never was a learn to code person, but I didn't learn to code. I probably maybe I guess I should not in
yeah,
retrospect
yeah,
because
yeah,
the machines do it
yeah,
now.
yeah.
So
Learn to plumb.
learn to plumb,
Yeah,
learn a physical activity, learn a thing that a machine can't do,
yeah,
and you'll have a good career. Learn to teach.
yeah,
Teaching, as we learned from the pandemic, virtual school was an utter failure. Screens are an utter failure. AI ain't teaching your kid.
yeah.
A teacher on a screen's not teaching your kid either. Your kid is learning with a human being in a classroom. So become a teacher
Yeah. It's very funny.
do
There's
that.
there's a like a school startup here in Austin called Alpha School, and they're often being pioneered as
Sounds terrifying.
uh and I know some people who have been involved in it, and
Yeah.
you will hear them described as, "Oh, the kids are being taught by AI." The kids are being, but that's not actually what
Yeah.
they do. It's that they use basically, they have real teachers.
Yeah.
They use some AI assisted tools to essentially evaluate where a kid is in their progress, and then we'll
Yeah.
tell them if they need to like go back and like build some foundational skills.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
Yeah.
what I think the real juice of that model is actually just that they've embraced like what someone's called mastery learning. Basically,
Yeah.
did you master the fundamentals? Then you can go forward.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like the everyone wants to focus on the AI part rather than the fact that it's like, no, what they're doing is breaking some assumptions that have dominated American education for 50 years. And if it's going to work, and who knows,
Hmm.
a lot of the students report or the evidence looks like students do really well there, but there's a big selection bias. It's fabulously expensive. It's more
Yeah.
expensive than any other private school in the city. Um, so who knows? But if anything, I think it just came from people trying to think about, are there alternative ways to structure an education rather than it's the AI and the tablet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right. And that teaching, and I do think the AI cheating, you know, cheating obsession or scandal, whatever you want to call it, in colleges now is an opportunity for colleges and universities to actually start teaching the right way and actually making sure a student learns the material. Imagine that. Maybe you bring back oral exams.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you bring back in-class work. Maybe the professor, and in many ways, these are adjuncts who are poorly paid. So I don't blame them. The system has failed them too. Maybe they really invest in the student,
Yeah.
and college should be for those who want to be there. It's not for everyone.
Mhm.
I think we created a world where everyone had to quote go to college, and that was not healthy. And now we're going to see a course
Yeah.
correction. That's what's happening.
What we saw was like a rise of like an industrial model of education.
Hmm.
Let's create a sort of template for education that everyone will have, not just through K through 12, but essentially K through 16. And we'll all learn our basic job skills there, and then you'll go out into the world. And it was trying to take a huge amount of people with very diverse experiences and diverse needs and shove them all into like one small framework. And I think that was already crumbling. And then AI just kind of widens the cracks a little bit.
Yes,
It sort of hastens the
AI
deterioration.
accelerates what was real rot in the
Yeah,
system, and
exactly.
and and in a way, that's probably a good thing about AI
Yeah,
because it exposed how shallow the type of learning that was happening, and also the fact that some people just should not be in college, and that's okay.
yeah.
And also, I think the universities themselves, now that we are in this new crisis of unemployed computer science grads. And this is a real thing now where a lot of people with computer science degrees and coding skills cannot get jobs because that is one thing AI can do. It's not maybe one day it'll write a great novel. It hasn't yet. It sure can code right now.
Hmm.
And that's always what these machines are going to be good at. They're good at things that um, you know, calculations
Yeah.
and what the human mind, is limited by in some ways. So the colleges made this error, I think, in not just the college, not just college, it's not just college. It was society broadly,
Hmm.
starting in around 2010 or so, not understanding the law of supply and demand. You tell everyone to code, there'll be a glut of people who can code, and there won't be jobs for all of them. You can't just have a funnel telling people all to do one thing and then being shocked when there's just a glut in the marketplace that now, of course, AI has made much worse. But that is what happens. It's why it's fine to go to college and get a humanities degree.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things you can do with it. Um, the only specific degrees I would say are engineering to an extent.
Hmm.
You could say pre-med, going to medical school. On that, I mean, major in the things you want to major and
Yeah.
you care about, and afterwards look for a job that suits. But don't. I think it's a mistake to tailor your degree to this sort of promised land of employment because as you see trends change,
Hmm.
and now with technology, AI undoubtedly is going to erase a lot of entry level work. And that's going to create its own problems where
Yeah.
if you lose the entry level work, and this is where the AI evangelists, once again, don't get what they're doing. If you take away all this entry level work, well, if you don't learn the grunt work of a law firm, for example, the law firm's now automating the grunt jobs away. How does one ever rise to be partner? How
Yeah.
does one develop those greater skills by starting at the bottom? And
And
there's no answer for that.
at universities, I suspect we're gonna see AI used mostly as an excuse to push further adjunctification. Oh,
Yes.
we'll just hire temporary workers, and they can use AI, and they can teach 300 person classes when they
Yes.
used to teach 75-person classes. And, that was a market that kind of fell out from the bottom of me when I was finishing my PhD, and I had to figure out, like, "The hell am I gonna do?" Because there's 6 jobs and 200 people apply for
Yep.
each one of them, and
Yep.
you had to kind of pivot. But sometimes people will ask me, "Should I still major in philosophy?" Like, since
Yeah.
that's my background. "Is it worth it, or is it worth it to go get an English degree?" And my response is basically, if you don't go into horrific amounts of debt and you actually read the books,
Yes.
I think it's great.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think anything is fine as long as you don't go into great amounts of debt.
Yeah.
But like doctoral programs are great because they'll fund you.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
exactly. I
thing.
went into no debt
There's no
to go to grad
debt.
school.
That's
Yeah.
why they're great.
Yeah.
And if you want to go to law school, I mean, no, either if you can afford it, go,
Mhm.
or recognize that you'll be in a lot of debt
Yeah.
and make the choice accordingly. I think with anything, I mean, the MFA debate is so interesting to me because, if you follow Substack, there are these now new old fights over the MFA and does the MFA have total control of literature? Should one get an MFA? Is MFA ruining writing? And I've actually been more pro MFA than maybe my reputation would suggest because I've been critical of institutions in the literary world. But I think the MFA is great if it's fully funded. I mean, I know many people who got MFAs had wonderful experiences and made lifelong friends.
You spend 2 years writing all the time.
Yeah. And you can still have a job while you do that. Like
Yeah.
you take I know people who went to MFA programs at night and
Mhm.
worked during the day.
Yeah.
And best decision they ever made. So it's the same thing. Don't go into debt.
Yeah.
Advice for MFAs, the advice for everything. Don't spend $80,000 to get an MFA.
Yeah, if you're going $80,000 into debt to get an MFA and you're gonna write poetry, you have to remember that you're going to pay to submit to every poetry journal.
Yes.
And, poetry is a beautiful thing to do,
Yes.
but if someone is telling you they'll teach you how to write poetry for $80,000,
Don't do it.
you can reasonably ask for what's the return on
Don't
investment.
don't do it.
Yeah.
But if it's fully funded, go do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go do these programs. And they build communities too.
And
Like
they're gonna help you flourish as a human being. They're
yes.
literally the
Oh,
humanity.
yeah,
Like,
totally.
go and
I
do these
mean,
things.
most people just enjoy them,
Yeah.
and that's good. So with all these things, I mean, I think with colleges now, if you look at the post-war period, I mean, college just didn't cost a lot of money. I mean, my father paid if like he'd worked his way through a private school, and it
Mhm.
was not hard to do. My mother went for free to the City University of New York when
Yeah.
it was tuition free. I went to a state school in New York State that was still quite cheap when I went, and the only real cost was room and board, but tuition was $5,000-6,000 a year, and you see that just eroding. I mean, even state schools now charge enormous sums of money. I do think now with the rise of AI, with the changing job markets, with the cost of education, there are schools that are probably going to go out of business, and also there are going to be schools that are going to have to charge less money. I mean,
Yep.
that's the truth.
Yeah.
Education got very bloated. A lot of education spending goes into admin, goes into extracurriculars. It's not going into the education side of things. I do think that kind of model, the sort of, I don't know what you call the Disneyfication of college.
Yeah, the rock climbing walls, like
Yes.
the huge sports
Yes,
teams, like all of this.
look, some school like the University of Texas can support it.
Yeah.
It's a landmark institution, and it's a great sports school, great
Yeah.
academic school too. But for a lot of these schools, they can't, and they shouldn't, try to compete with the University of Texas of the world or like the Berkeleys of the world. They should just be educational institutions. And I think actually students will respect that more. I actually think students are discerning.
Yeah.
I think they want to learn. I think they want to get a return on investment. And if you don't spend a lot to go to school, not finding a job right away is not such a bitter pill to
It's
swallow.
less dire as well.
It's much less dire. If you go to an affordable school, then it's okay that you did a major that seems less lucrative,
Yeah.
right? But the problem is when you go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt and I mean, the truth is when you're racking up that much debt outside of like medical degrees, there's almost no way to really recoup it. I mean,
Yeah.
white shoe law firm, but like you're talking really top tier law jobs
And we're talking jobs where
or medicine.
you're gonna work 80 hours a week
Yes,
for a
yes.
very
You
long
are you're
time.
talking yes, you're talking a job where you're gonna make a lot of money and that's gonna be your life, or becoming a doctor. You can go have to go to medical school and over time, if you survive in the field, you will eventually recoup. But beyond that, it makes no sense. And I don't have children yet. And if I did, and I was thinking about college, down the road, like that my view would be go to the most affordable
Yeah.
place and major in what you want.
Yeah.
Just
Even the Harvard MBA doesn't have a return on investment anymore.
probably no.
Harvard was writing for an alumni, like for their MBA alumni, just saying that the Harvard MBA like no longer opens the doors that it used to
Yeah.
open.
It's just yeah, it's just a different world now.
Yeah.
So that will continue to evolve. And I just think educational institutions, my hope is they'll just correct.
Yeah.
I think that they'll pull back on the bloat, pull back on the overspending, focus on academics,
Yeah.
and charge less money. I mean, and of course, the other side of this is the state schools don't get enough support. I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen the pullback from s- states themselves or from the federal government.
Mhm.
So seeing that's also something, I would like to see more investment in community colleges and in good state
Yeah.
schools because
We've never recovered fully from the 2008 financial crisis.
no, no, we've not.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer, someone who went to a SUNY. I got my master's degree at NYU. It was a English, it was a short English program. It
Mhm.
wasn't that much money,
Yeah.
so it was affordable. Um, I'm a big believer in public education. So my hope is we reorient back that way and also just but orient toward a society where one doesn't have to go to college.
Yeah.
One can go if they choose. And I think that's how it was until probably even into the 1990s,
Yeah.
where college was for those who really, wanted it and it had a premium to it because very few people went. Now we tell everyone you see this on the left and right both, where education is the answer to income inequality. Education opens all doors. And I love education. Education is great. But no, you aren't going to solve structural income inequality by just sending more people to
Yeah.
college. It's not
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah. All right, Russ, we've been talking for a very long time. So I want to wrap this up and ask you uh, one final question, which is something we ask for everybody, which is to ask if you have a book recommendation for our audience. We're often looking for books that
Yeah.
nobody's reading, but we think everybody
Mm.
should.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I have a novel by a dead man, but it's worth reading. So Ken Kesey is very famous for writing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a great book, which is made into a movie with Jack Nicholson and everyone knows. No one knows his second novel, Sometimes a Great Notion, which is this wonderful epic of the Pacific Northwest, written in kind of the style of like Faulkner's Absalom, Absalom. So Sometimes a Great Notion by Ken Kesey was a formative novel of my youth, and I highly recommend it. No one knows about it or talks about it. So I'd say read that one.
Ross Barkan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.